Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. I'm your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, and this is an interesting episode because it starts off as a connection on LinkedIn that turns into a reader of the book, How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power, that turns into a relationship, a friendship, and now eventually a podcast guest on the very podcast after the very book that brought us together. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my next guest, whose name is Raul, and he is a supporter of the book and the podcast. So, welcome, Raul, to the show today, my friend. Please introduce yourself.
Hi there, Tara, and it's a real pleasure finally meeting you here. And exactly, that's exactly how it all started. And isn't it amazing? It's an amazing journey, and here I am. And for everyone watching, my name is Raul Ruiz. I live in Southern California, so it's morning time over here for me. And I work for a large healthcare system. I'm not sure how my employer is about mentioning names. It's such a regulated industry, but let's just say I work for a large healthcare system in Southern California. I am a registered respiratory therapist, and I specialize in neonatal and pediatric healthcare in that specific field. I'm 53 years old. I'm married. I have 3 wonderful children. I often post about them on LinkedIn. And I have talked to Tara a number of occasions about, and others too, just adventures that I take with my kids, trying to share, life lessons and just things that they can take for themselves. And your book, Tara, is something I do grasp from too. And I like that, gratitude and the grasp, because sometimes it is kind of like grasping for what you can, to have some kind of a foundation, something solid. But basically, I've also worked in the past in leadership roles. I actually have just recently come back doing clinical bedside care. And this is something that, we can go through in the story about my journey. And it relates to the pandemic, which is definitely something I think most of us, if not everybody, has a story to share, has memories and thoughts about it. But you get to hear it from somebody who was down there in the trenches, so to speak, and how that kind of took me on a journey for, kind of coming to understand the idea of leadership, building confidence, learning what that really means in a time of turmoil, and not necessarily being in a role that's really calling you to it. And, sometimes it's kind of tag you're it. And what will you do? What can you do in those situations? And it's amazing what each of us has a potential for, and what you learn about yourself when you just sort of get thrown right into the mix.
Wow.
It's interesting.
Incredible. So you're 53. You don't look at all. I want to say that because this gets aired as a podcast, right? So for our podcast listeners, they may be saying, okay, what does this guy look like, right? Tan skin. I'm very jealous. My friend Raul, Southern California, right? By the way, I just freckle, Raul. I don't, or burn. I don't actually. Yeah, I just skipped that whole tan process and go right back to pale. But we're all different, right?
Sure.
But I love your energy. I love your energy, your enthusiasm for life. And that's one of the things that kind of brought us together, was that authentic, sharing that you're talking about. It sounds like that pandemic wore a lot on you and a lot on your colleagues as well. And it's interesting. The primary reader base of my book are healthcare professionals, and most of them are physicians.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating, and that was not necessarily anticipated, right? But the stories that I've heard from readers just like you, who are also in healthcare, have referenced the pandemic and referenced not just that, but physician burnout, healthcare, just burnout in the entire industry. the feeling of you cannot do enough.
Yes.
And that often can make us feel not enough. What do you
That's
think
very
about
true.
What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I got to tell you, Tara, prior to the pandemic, trying to, basically paint the picture of life for me um, versus what it was post pandemic, it's like night and day. And it was so abrupt. It started off as kind of a curiosity. I remember myself, in fact, I remember like it was yesterday, myself and a lot of colleagues who would stand around and we would exchange stories like, hey, have you noticed on Twitter, there's a lot of stories coming out of mainland China. And it looks crazy, like unbelievable. There's hospitals inundated with thousands of patients. People look scared. There are doctors from that country pleading with the world, like, hey, this is coming, be prepared, don't take it seriously, that kind of thing. And we're just watching, Tara, and it's just like, okay, this is interesting. Like, perhaps it's just internet fluff or something like that. We just kind of wanted to believe, like, okay, this is going to touch us. The world is not small and it's not interconnected, which is not true. With modern technology and everything that it is, I mean, we're actually truly that interconnected. I think from that moment that I had those conversations, literally 2 months later, here in the state of California where I live, we were in a total shutdown. And the next, it's like my life got turned upside down. At the time, I worked in San Diego County. Right now, I work in Orange County. But back then, during the pandemic, I was at San Diego, and I was at a specialty hospital that was for critically ill patients that required really high level care. So basically, kind of fit that mold of what we were going to see. And generally, when we would admit patients, we had a census of something like 100 to 115 patients at any given time. Within about a month or two of that pandemic, I kid you not, we probably had a waiting list, Tara, and not just in California, but from other states, probably over 1,000 patients just trying to get placed somewhere where they could get that extra high level care. And I'd never been in a situation like that. Nobody had. And the stress that placed on so many of us, the turnover was just unbelievable. There were a lot of things that happened that I wasn't prepared for at that time. And, I don't know if anybody really is prepared for that. I saw, patients die daily. I saw, colleagues that moved on. And then I shared with you, Tara, I even had a colleague that contemplated suicide because she was so stressed out. And really that's where my journey begins, Tara. And I will talk to that.
Yeah.
I, at the time when we had so many people uh, leaving the field, whether they were retiring early, whether it was just like, hey, maybe if I go to a different hospital, it'll be a better situation, which wasn't the case. And some people just left the field altogether. But I do admire those that were there with me that decided, um, perhaps I can be a manager. Perhaps I can be a director of something or something in leadership. I'm going to take a shot at it because now those opportunities are there. People
Wow.
have just run. And sometimes, there is such a thing as luck, right, Tara? I mean, it's timing. There is that
Yeah.
luck, but you have to also have that motivation to seize that luck. You're like, oh, there it is. Nobody's paying attention to it. Nobody appears to want it. I'm going for it. And I had a colleague that she did that. And she was young. She was a registered nurse, very intelligent, very motivated, and seized on an opportunity like that. And we were all proud of her. Like, hey, you know what? Good for you. Welcome to the club. And you're not alone. Like, we're all struggling together. So don't feel like you're alone. But, as that time moved on, Tara, with each passing month during the pandemic, and I felt like in that first year, it seemed like it got worse before it got better. We didn't have a vaccine yet, things like that in that first year. And then you never know what's going on in somebody's personal life. We typically work like 8 to 12-hour shifts. So we're there for a long period of time, and we're generally just focused on the care. And you forget that important part, just being human, just not taking the time to step aside and say, hey, how are you doing today? I notice you look a little stressed. What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
I didn't do enough of that, Tara. And that's where, I've learned a lot about myself personally, just growing. And, one day, um, we always would have meetings daily, a typical, middle management to upper management interactions, always this daily morning huddle, and you get meetings and there's post-its and notes to each other about, oh, this needs to be done. There's a deadline on this, and the, budgets, and Raul, how's the revenue look, and where are we with this? In that plethora of just daily activity, my friend, she would always leave little post-its, and she was an incredible artist, and I'll never forget that. She would draw little pictures, reminders for me and a couple other managers, because I was a director of marketing at that time for that hospital. And I would see those little post-its, and I'm like, this is beautiful. She's scolding me, but it's beautiful. And it's something that was catchy, and I thought, okay, and it kind of motivated me to get a little bit more motivated to get to know her, even in my short, because I was so busy during that time, and we all were just trying to survive that. And as time moved on, I just thought, she's young, she's doing this, she's ambitious, good for her. We'll support her. I'll support her any way I can, and I need to be a little bit more on time with these requirements that she has. She was in employee health, and during that time, that was critical. Like, if I had an employee that appeared to be infected or whatnot, like, she needed to know. She had to report that to our public health department, things like that. So months are moving on. One day, just seemed like an ordinary day to her. Nothing different about it. We had a meeting earlier in the morning, and I had left and it was actually in her office. I had left my folder, because I kept my own post notes and stuff. I left it in her office, and then I thought, oh, I got to go back over there and get that. So I go over there, and I don't notice anybody. We're all, we all trust each other. I thought, well, I know where I left it. I'll just knock. If anybody's there, great. If she's there, great. If not, I'm just gonna go in there, and grab it, and leave. And so I go in there, and she's there, and she's just looked like a different person, and she looked startled that I came in. And she's like, "You didn't knock," and because I said I did, but nobody answered, so I just came in. I'm sorry, and I told her, am I interrupting anything? And she just looked zoned out, and she had all this medication on her desk, and and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, that's unusual. And I'm starting to talk to her now. I'm like, hey, I said, is everything okay? Because you don't look okay. You look like you've been crying. Her eyes were really red and just looked really upset. So I told her, I said, if you don't mind, I've got free time. Like, let me close the door. Let's talk. Mm-hmm. I said, what's going on here? And, and that's when she broke down crying, and she said, I'm so stressed out. Oh. I'm married. I don't know if you knew I was married, Raul. And I said, no, I didn't know that. She said, well, I am, and it's terrible. And she's telling me that piece. And, wow. There was a lot of, physical abuse, that kind of thing. And that like, I'm like, hey, it's not just because I consider you a friend, but, I'm obligated to report that kind of thing. That's just unacceptable. And I told her that, and maybe I'm not scolding you or anything, like, but, please share more, because now I'm going to help you, So she's going through that piece, and then just kind of sharing with me the stress of just the job, the stress of everything that's kind of come down on her. And really, Tara, her whole motivation was, like most of us when we're young, you want to make a higher income. You like the reception of being rewarded with recognition. Hey, I'm accomplishing something. Those are good things. Those are the right things to pursue those, positions in your life. But I guess for her, maybe the timing was just not there. And then she had this issue at home. Um, but, you know, to be there and understand that now I have an opportunity to help somebody, and I have an opportunity to not be so mechanical. And, you know, and just because I'm going through my thing, you know, I'm a marketing director. I was responsible 100% for that hospital census. And that was always top of mind, because when I walked into that building, Tara, my responsibility and my accomplishment was always on my sleeve. If that hospital wasn't full, people were looking at me like, hey, what are you doing here? You need to be working hard. I have goals. I have family. I have things I need to pay, you know, bills. So it was always, you know, I understand that pressure. And I thought, you know, I deal with pressure all the time, but every one of us is a unique human being. We all have limits. I have limits, Tara. Everybody does. And I saw, you know, my good friend there. I said, well, she's reached her limit, but I'm not going to let her go over that cliff of what she's thinking. So what turned it around is like what I shared with you before, is that I told her, I said, hey, I said, you're not going to do this, and we're going to just put this stuff away. I said, I want you to go down and talk to, you know, we had another, like a charge nurse. I need you to talk to her. We're going to go together, and you're going to take care of this, and we're going to take care of you. And I told her, but what I want you to know is that you are valuable, and you mean something to everybody. I told her, and it makes me emotional thinking about it, because I told her, you know, those little Post-its that you scold me with, and they're beautiful pictures because you like drawing hummingbirds and ladybugs, and they're very, you know, I'm a terrible artist. I told her, I can't draw for nothing. I mean, it's just little sticks and yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a talent, right? It's a gift.
It is, and I don't have it.
Yeah, I certainly don't, Tara. And I told her, you know, I share these with my daughter. And that caught her eye. And I said, my daughter thinks you're cute. You know, she's a little girl. You want to see a picture of my daughter? So then I show her, and she's just starts crying. She's like, I didn't know that. And I said, yeah. I said, you matter. You need to understand that you matter.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't know what's going on at home, young lady. I said, but you know what? That can be solved. Don't let somebody treat you like that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You take care of that, and you can, and you will. I told her, you will figure this out, but let's get you the help you need. And right now, I said, get it while you can, because everybody's in their own turmoil, right? And she's like, yeah. I said, but you're not alone. You're not. And, you know, this is about the best I can do for you, but I'm going to do it. So let's go. You know, so I told her, let's go. And I told her, and promise me, don't stop drawing those little pictures. Now, I do promise I'll try to be more on time with things that you need, but I'm not perfect. So I know eventually I'm going to catch one of those little Post-its to remind me of things I need to be doing on time. I said, but don't ever stop that, because things that you do, some of us definitely pay attention, and it does matter to people. And I would love to see you keep bringing a smile to my daughter's face with those little Post-its. So she did for the longest time. You know, she would, hey, does your daughter like this? Do you think she'll like a bat? Or I said, she likes anything the way you draw it. And I collected them for a while, Tara. You know, my daughter and I, we tried looking for them not that long ago, and we couldn't find them, but they're somewhere. They're somewhere in the house. I just want to keep, I want to keep them, and then, you know, share that story with my daughter, because she's old enough now to understand, you know, and she's moved on. My friend's moved on. She got divorced, met a new man. I heard she's super happy, still out there practicing in Southern California, San Diego, and doing amazing. But I definitely wanted to share that. Yeah. Because it's really the beginning of my journey, Tara, of trying to improve myself, trying to be I don't think I'm a bad person. I mean, but there's always a opportunity to be better. Like a better version of yourself, right?
Yep. every time.
And
And you're talking a lot about leadership right now, and that resonates with this audience because what we've unpacked, which was a lot in that one story, was someone who was working with you, a colleague. They were in a place of turmoil, inner turmoil. It was invisible to the outside world, right? We didn't know what was happening in their lives, their personal lives. And then we have all these expectations of our coworkers or other people in our lives, and we don't ever know what somebody's going through in their minds and in their hearts and in their lives secularly, right? Away from work. So it's also about the acknowledgement of those natural little gifts, like you're talking about, telling someone, hey, you have this natural gift for doodling in her case, right? Telling her and making her feel good, because those little acts of appreciation can go a dramatically long way for somebody struggling, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of leadership lessons in there. And that's why I'm so passionate to talk to you about this topic, is because, when we lean into people and take that genuine, authentic interest, and we're not afraid to bridge those moments of vulnerability with somebody, that's when you're a leader on a different level, right, Raul? I mean, it's
Yes.
it's transcending the walls and boundaries of that hospital. In your case, it could be a corporate office in someone else's case. But I really believe that leadership is leaving it better than how you found it, regardless of what that is, whether it's a project, a customer, a work proposal, a job, or a client, or another human being. Leave it better than you found it. And being authentic with people, being
Mhm.
authentic and sharing that humanity with them. That's what people need, I feel like, now more than ever. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And it's that authenticity of being caring and not just something that's scripted per se. It does matter, Tara. And the thing is, for me, um, there was a time where, like a lot of ambitious people, I'm pursuing, more opportunity. I've got my own goals for myself, for my family, and I'm trying to hit those goals and putting a lot of passion into it. But I tend to forget, like, you know, outside of myself, there's life's going on around me, and there's other people, and they have their own ambitions and they have their own problems, just like I do. I mean, I don't have a perfect life. And for me, it's always a work in progress of just trying to be that better person.
Yep.
Um, but to do that and to really like grasp it, kind of use Lucy your strategy is you have to grasp authenticity. It has to be there, and sometimes that's hard, Tara. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I've had a hard time doing that, because I come from a humble background. My parents, I love them to death, but in their beginning, they were pretty poor.
Mm-hmm.
Now they changed that around later on in their life, to have some measure of success. Um, but that means different things for everybody, right? And it looks different for everybody. Um, so for me, as I started to climb up the ladder, so to speak, there are different levels of success that were completely alien to me. Like, oh, okay, as a director of marketing, I'm going to be responsible taking out, a physician group to, promote our services. And the head of this group, this gentleman or person or woman is worth millions. How do I interact with that person? What do I need to do? But Tara, I've learned over time that it's just being authentic. Just human beings
Absolutely.
like me, like anybody else. They just had a little bit more passion, maybe, and they got to this other level of life. And that was
Yep.
such a great lesson for me, because I thought, man, I just totally overplayed this. Like, this was this huge, unbelievable thing. And I'm sitting here having dinner with this person, In fact, I remember, I'll never forget, there was it was actually a young woman. She was like in her early 40s, and she was the largest owner of like board and care facilities in Southern California. It still is. Very competitive. Amazing person, amazing personality. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably worth like close to 100 million. But and I was intimidated, thinking, man, how do I interact with somebody like this? But at the end, like you were saying, Tara, it's just about being authentic. And I didn't want to appear to her as this scripted guy that's coming in almost mechanical, like it just being authentic and actually just asking her like, hey, I'd like to learn as much as I can because I know your time is important. And we've got this hour together. I know we're going to be talking a little bit about my facility, but I want to learn as much about you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it gets back to like my friend is an example out there in that incident. It's about getting to know something about everybody. We all have something to share, regardless of where you are in your life.
I love that. Well, I want to end the show with the story you told me before the show started because it was so good. I wanted our listeners to take that away as well. So, we've talked a lot about today leadership, confidence, authenticity. Reaching out to people with authenticity, being our most authentic versions of ourselves. But I also want to end this conversation on a note of gratitude. As we know, that's the first principle I teach in the GRASP method is gratitude. But you actually had a local experience talking to a local business owner. You said a coffee shop owner about gratitude and let him borrow the book that you bought. So I would love to hear a little bit about that story.
Absolutely. So I have a good friend who also owns his own coffee shop there at the hospital that I work at. And amazing personality. His name is David. And, what's amazing is that we had a discussion about you, Tara, and about your book. And yeah, and I was, excited. I was telling me, hey, I'm going to be on a podcast. Never been on something like that before. Tara is just this amazing personality, and her book is just excellent. I said, you really need to read this. And I told him it's on the topic of confidence, and she's got a very, structured way to kind of reach that. And I like that, and I told him, because I need that kind of discipline. I need something that I can just follow almost like an algorithm.
Yep.
Because I work that way. Because I'm very analytical too. It's almost necessary for the kind of work that I do. So that's why it really rings to me, Tara. And, David was like, yeah, I'll check it out. And so that, about a month or so passed by. And then one day, as we're getting closer to today, I'm coming up to get my coffee from him because I usually stop by in the morning to get that before I leave for home. And he's got a group of customers. It's a big group of people, maybe 10 to a dozen. And he's talking to them about gratitude. And he's quoting excerpts from your book, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's Tara's book. So that's awesome. So then he embarrasses me because he says, oh, hey, everybody got to stop. He's like, we're in the presence of greatness here. He's like, let's make a little space here for Raul. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? And he said, I'm just kidding, guys. He said, this technique and this concept of grasp and how to build confidence. He said, I actually learned that from a book that Raul loaned me.
Wow.
And he said, and this, let me tell you about Tara. And he was talking about you, and he was excited. He said, it's excellent. You guys should read that. You really should read that and explore that. So then I was just embarrassed, like laughing, and said, that's fantastic, David. I said, this is really cool. I said, thank you, because you took the time to actually investigate that, and this is a pleasant surprise. I said, and I told him, I will mention this on the podcast. I will let Tara know, because, after having read her story, and it's an amazing story, and you know, I told them that's the kind of stuff we need more of that today. Less negativity, right, Tara? Because I firmly believe that you are what you think.
Yes.
And if you're constantly being negative, and that's all that flows out of your head, you literally manifest that and become that. So I said, why don't we try for a change and be positive and read from others who have created a positive journey for themselves and have something to share and say? I said, imagine if we all just did that. And I said, well, you know what? I know what's the end result because it's right here. This is the kind of stuff that happens. You got to gather into people and they're intrigued.
And, you know, the concept of gratitude is not new, right? And what I love is that so many people, you know, have read the book and said, it's so simple. And I said, it never was supposed to be complicated. We've made it complicated. We've made it convoluted. It's supposed to be a very simple answer. And the answer is it starts with gratitude. And I tell people this all the time. Gratitude is the law of increase. So if you start with increase, how are you going to go wrong? Apply it to anything in life, whether it's building confidence, building a career, right? Stepping on stage, writing a book, doesn't matter what you do. If you apply gratitude as your first principle and have that as your foundational element, it not only is success possible, success will be inevitable if you pair it with action.
Yes.
You know, it's so fundamentally simple, but if you just think about it, that's the keys to the universe. It's how to manifest anything you want in life, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you just hit a word with me that does strike with me: action. Just,
Action.
you know, making it happen, just taking that extra step. And sometimes, Tara, right? It's just maybe one step outside of your circle of comfort to make something really positive happen. And no, I love that. I love that. And it's so true. I mean, and that's my whole purpose. I guess if I wanted the audience here to understand where my motivation comes, is that, you know, my journey is not over. I still have a lot of things that I need to approve for myself on a personal level, so I can get to that next stage of life that I want to be. But it's going to take action on my part, and I'm going to have. I mean, I'm going to have to grasp for it. So right now, you know, I'm probably not where I'm going to be for the remainder of my life. I mean, I'm not a super old guy, but I'm getting up there at 53. But so I got a little ways to go, and I know my journey is not going to stop here. And I just want to share as much about, you know, the passion of trying to kind of instill confidence in others, and just kind of, you know, give them that feedback, like, you know, you can do it. What are your dreams? You know, what are your ambitions? Talk to me about it. Oh, that's beautiful. Why aren't you pursuing it? Right? Why aren't you pursuing it? You can do it. You can do it. So I'm going to continue to share my message wherever I can and just be that resource for that. And then I'm going to be working on my journey too as well, because I know I don't think it's quite done yet.
No, it's certainly not. In fact, I think I see a future podcast host right in front of me here. I'm just getting you warmed up, buddy.
I love it. I love it. You know, I can't say enough, Tara. You're fantastic, and I really, really appreciate what you're doing out there.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you just
absolutely.
keep on, you just keep on plugging away.
Keep on plugging away. One step, one day at a time. That's what it's all about. Well, thank you so much for the amazing interview today, Raul. Again, this is proof that, you know, authors, do you know your readers? I want to say that. Do you know your readers? Because if you do, you need to develop relationships with them and add value to them. As business owners, do we know our clients, right? Do we know our network on social media? Are we developing these authentic relationships? Because this is how you, you know, you turn somebody who is a connection into a relationship, and then they become an advocate. And Raul is telling people about confidence. He's letting others, read my book, and they're getting excited about it. That's how you start that wildfire, right? So just for anybody's benefit out there, regardless of what you're trying to do, starting a podcast, writing a book, business, just networking. You do it with authenticity, and you really get to know people on a deep level. And that way you can serve them on an even deeper level. So thank you so much for everyone who has tuned into the show today. Thank you for my amazing guest, Raul. And we will catch you all on the next episode. Take care.